Hey everybody, it's Jason here from LMN. I am the Director of Customer Success here at LMN. Hope everyone's having a great start to your week. Happy Monday. Today, the topic is creating a copy of your budget to plan for any economy. So I'm going to go through some tips and tricks with using the copy feature through LMN and how you can use it to help you with planning and forecasting, and also some other scenarios as well that you'll be able to take advantage of. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into it and share my screen here so you can see what it is I'm referring to. Hopefully everyone can see this. Right now, I'm in my budget section in my LMN account where we're going to be going over the topic today. So just for those of you that don't have an LMN account perhaps yet, this is our budget section. Feel free to follow along if you do have an LMN account, obviously, or a free account, just by going to the budget section here on my screen. So you can click on that budget button. That takes you to this screen where you're going to see all your budgets so that we can create a copy of them. So before I get into that, just want to quickly go over why do we create a copy to help us plan and forecast. What's the point? Why bother? And the reason is, the better prepared we are and the better planned we are, the better business decisions we'll be able to make. So whether the economy is doing well or doing poorly, having some copies of your budget is just going to help you forecast and plan should there be any change to the forecasting that you did at the beginning of the year. So if you didn't copy your budget and you just kept it as is, perhaps from like what you set up in December or January or even earlier than that, then you kind of run the risk of, if there is a change, perhaps your sales goal is too aggressive and you're not charging enough to recover your overhead, things like that. So always important to pay attention to your budget numbers, review them frequently, perhaps every quarter at least. It's not really a set it and forget it type deal. So with that in mind, I'll jump in here and go over how to copy the budget. So for me, I've got all these sample budgets listed. You can see which one is my default. So it's this $1 million budget here. There are other samples that do come with your LMN account. So 700,000, 3.5, and there's a few others as well. You can pick which one is closest to your revenue if you're just getting started. Or obviously you can follow along with your budget or use the plus new button to create a new budget. So for me, I'm just going to jump into this one, just where that circle is clicking there. And I'll left click there. Now I'm in my budget, and why do I want to create a copy versus just changing the budget? Well, you could always just go in and adjust the budget that you've created rather than creating a copy. But I like to create a copy just so you can see trends, right? So what your original forecast was compared to your new forecast. So kind of like having different versions of an estimate, you can always fall back on the previous version. So for that, creating a copy can be pretty beneficial. So just down here in the right-hand corner, hopefully you guys can all see that in your account, is a copy button. So for the purpose of the webinar today, creating a copy to help plan for any type of economy. And then I'll discuss some other use cases for using this copy button, because there's plenty of other use cases as well that you could use it for. And we'll click on that to get started here. So by default, Element's just going to name it copy of, and then whatever your current budget name is. Feel free to change that if you want to. So for example, I can take out the copy, and then maybe I put a dash and say version 2, or perhaps I change that to something like optimistic, right? So we can have an optimistic budget, maybe a pessimistic budget, stuff like that. And then it's still for the year 2020, and my company name isn't changing there, so I can just hit OK. So now we've got a new budget that's under construction, as you can see. So important to note that it can't be used for estimating just yet. So, we want to make some changes and we'll need to activate it when we're done in order to use it for estimating. So from here, we've created a copy of the budget and now we just want to make some adjustments. So, when you're making adjustments, I think it's important to kind of stick with like a good, better, best type scenario, or perhaps just a couple different variables versus, plugging in the exact percentage that you think your sales is going to change. So it might be more like having one or two copied versions of your budget versus just having one version of your budget. So for that, we can go to sales. And this is my optimistic budget. So let's say I think, economy is going to bounce back with all the changes that are going on, who knows. So we'll start with optimism. It is Monday after all. So what I would want to do is just adjust my forecast here. So my current forecast for installation is 680, 220 for maintenance sales, and then 100,000 for snow and ice. My snow and ice probably won't change too much, but if I think that my installation sales might be impacted, for example, or my maintenance sales could be impacted positively in this case, I can go ahead and just update these forecast numbers. So I can make some changes here. Again, this one is going up. We can do another copy of our budget where maybe our sales forecast is going down. But for this case, we'll make these adjustments here. And we'll just do some slight increases. So always a good idea to save your changes as you go. And now I've adjusted my forecast for my sales, but we're not done yet. Obviously, if you're predicting the sales to go up, well, then we would want to consider how is our labor going to get affected? Are we going to need to hire more people? And vice versa if we were doing the opposite thing here, right? So if my sales, if I was predicting it to go down, well then, how is my labor going to be affected? Can we do the same work with less people? Do we need to increase the wages to entice people to come to work? Things like that you want to be considering and making adjustments into your wage. And maybe it's things that you've had to adjust already that wasn't part of your original budget either. So you can make those adjustments now. So let's say I ended up hiring one additional laborer. I can make that adjustment here. And then again, always a good idea to save your changes. Now for things like equipment, again, depending on the type of budget that you're building here, you want to consider, how your equipment is going to be impacted. Do you have rentals right now that perhaps you won't need, or will have to rent some more equipment, for example? Fuel, how is your fuel going to be impacted? Is that going to go up or down? If you're building an optimistic budget, chances are, fuels might go up depending on the price of gas in your area, of course. And if you're building a budget more so to kind of plan for a recession, for example, maybe if you are no longer renting equipment or leasing equipment, you can make those types of adjustments here as well, and perhaps lower that the fuel and repairs a bit. Now, important to note too, for the purpose of today, happy to walk through and obviously showcase some of these tips and things like that. And I will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. But one thing that, that would be tough for me to go over is just like how much of a adjustment that you're going to make. That's something that's going to vary, state to state, province to province, and even county to county, depending on the laws and how your area is impacted. So Not something that I'll really be touching on, but hopefully these tips and adjustments that I'm showing you help with your planning regardless. So moving on to materials here. In this case, I did, increase sales. So my materials, I would want to increase as well. So similarly, if I was decreasing sales, I would look to decrease materials. And you want to try to keep your average percentage the same. So my materials before I made that adjustment was about 22%. Well, then I know I will probably want to try and keep that that average relatively the same. So perhaps I bump up my forecast from 190,000 to 200, and then maybe maintenance, slight uptick there. Feel free to utilize these comments as well. So I always find comments useful, especially when you might be revisiting this budget months later and maybe forget why you made some of these changes that you made. So writing a comment is a good way to remind yourself months down the road when you're revisiting your budget. Or if you have anyone else with their eyes on the budget, like your accountant or bookkeeper, or LMN, if you have your account rep helping you out doing a budget review, for example. Comments can help with those situations as well with keeping everyone in the loop. So if I got my materials back up to 22% there, again, I can make a save just to stay on pace there. And then the only thing that we would also have to look at, can we, in this case, perform the same amount of, or that increase in sales with the same amount of overhead? Or, are we going to need more supplies? Do we need to hire anyone else for the office to help with the increased sales? And again, if this was a budget that I was creating a copy of for a downturn in the economy, going through your overhead, where can you save money? What can you utilize more? Overhead equipment, is the fuel accurate? Do we still have all these estimator vehicles, for example? Things like that. So after going through making those adjustments, I've made an optimistic budget. I can go back to the budget info section up here. And then since I've already saved it, the only thing I would have to do moving forward is if I wanted to use it for estimating, I would just have to activate that budget. So once I activate it, I can use it. Now, if you're just doing this for planning purposes, so if you're really at this point not sure how things will be impacted, let's say through a downturn, well, you don't have to activate it right away. You can just keep it on the back burner, if you will, for planning purposes. And then later on, should you decide, okay, you know what, I think our sales are going to be impacted, you can just switch your budget to the one that you had created a copy for. So I would just say activate budget. So now it's active. I could use it for estimates if I wanted to, or if I wanted to make it my default. So my first choice when I create a new estimate, then I simply have to go down to mark as default. And do I want to make it my default for standard estimates and service estimates, or just one or the other? In this case, because it's a total company budget, I'm going to mark it default for both. So standard estimates being those one-time jobs, and service estimates being recurring jobs. I'm going to make it my default for both. Okay, so that's kind of the step that you would take if you decided you wanted to move forward with using that copied version of your budget. So again, optimistic version here, but let's say, again, you wanted to create maybe like a pessimistic version or recession version. Maybe we call this less optimistic. And I'll take out that copy of. So really quick, now I've got, a third copy of this budget that I can use to plan for perhaps a downturn, right? So let's say, I don't expect any more growth, then I can drop that down to 580 and we're just going to keep things the way they were last year. And then basically going through this budget and adjusting my labor, my equipment, my materials, just like we did in the previous version, only this time for the opposite effect, right? So now we've got an optimistic budget, and then we've got our pessimistic or less optimistic budgets. So we're prepared. We've got the original budget, we've got an optimistic one, and then our pessimistic. And then we're prepared to really use whichever budget we feel is going to be most likely scenario. So if your sales have been dropping, for example, then maybe we put in the adjustment here. And again, especially in these times, I would just suggest keeping a close eye on your financials, of course, and maybe revisiting the budget more so than you typically would, just to make sure that the adjustments that you've made are still accurate, so that you're recovering enough overhead in your estimating. If your sales goal is too high, it might be trying to spread out your overhead recovery over estimates that are just not going to be coming through the door anymore. So you would have to scale back your sales here to make sure that your overhead recovery is coming up with the correct percentages. So you can see on this one, I mean, my profit and loss is at a negative, but that's just because I haven't gone through and adjusted everything else. So if my sales are lower, then what else do I have to make adjustments to, whether it be fuel, probably materials, right? Materials won't be as high. And then any labor adjustments, if you need to make a labor adjustments, of course, we would do that in the labor section. Just another quick tip for everybody too, if you are working in the budget and going to be spending some time here, there is this like 3-line icon at the top where you can expand to get more space. So super helpful if you're working on like a Microsoft Surface tablet or an iPad or things like that. Just gives you a bit more screen room there. So feel free to utilize that. So, I mean, LMN makes it really quick and easy for you to update the budget. By using that copy feature, you can see how quick, you can make adjustments to your budget if you know your numbers and are comfortable with your financials. Definitely the first time that you build a budget in LMN will take a little bit of time to input that information, but moving forward in the years to come, all you have to do is use that copy button and make adjustments to your sales, make adjustments to your wages and overhead, but you don't have to type out all the line items all over again. So if you're planning, for the economy, or you're planning for purchasing equipment or whatever the case may be, you don't have to create a whole new budget. Just utilize that copy feature and save yourself a ton of time there. So optimistic, less optimistic, whatever you end up naming your budgets, I hope that copy feature works well for you. Some other use cases that you can use the copy feature for, really, I mean, any sort of hiring or purchasing decision that you're planning on making, if you want to see how it affects your bottom line, well, again, feel free to use that copy feature, punch in the additional labor, see how it affects your profit and loss, plug in the information about the maybe piece of equipment that you're interested in purchasing, just to see the ROI that you're going to have to bring in order to pay for that machinery, and what adjustments to your sales that you're going to need to make in order to make hiring that extra person worth it, or purchasing that piece of equipment worth it. So really great use of the copy feature there to help with your financial planning and business planning. in a really quick way. And then another thing that you can use a copy feature, the copy feature for, would be creating divisional budgets. So if you want to see how each division is performing in your company, well, you can use the copy feature here to really simply, again, call this one landscape, just to really see how each division is performing. So, if you want to see, what division's making money, which division is not. I've had plenty of clients that, think that one division in their company is kind of a loss leader, and they just assume it's going to be a lower profit, and that's not always the case. So it can definitely be worth creating a copy of the budget just to see for sure how things are going on each department. And really all you need to do is, if this is my landscape budget, well, then I would just have to either delete the line items out for my other divisions, or you can simply just zero it out. So I'd save that. And then again, go down to the labor section and either again, action and delete, or you can just adjust staff down to 0. So quick way to create a divisional budget. Just double check the salary, make sure there's nothing there. And then I would go down my list. So when I get to equipment, does that piece of equipment just work in one division, like a snowplow? If so, I can zero it out. Or is it used in perhaps 2 different divisions? If that's the case, like a skid steer, perhaps you use it for snow and you use it for landscape. Just hit that calculator button there. And this is where you can adjust. So if this is a divisional budget, enter the number of months it works in this division. So if this was for landscape, let's say it's 8 months. In my snow budget, I would put in the additional 4. So just another example of how you can really use the copy feature for more than just planning for the economy, but planning how your divisions are doing. If you wanted to come up with maybe some more accurate estimating prices by using a divisional budget, you could certainly use it for that as well. Hiring decisions, purchasing decisions, all that kind of great stuff. So I'm just going to go back to my budget list and we'll just do a quick recap on the tips for today. So again, creating a copy of your budget to plan for the economy, great way to stay prepared, really easy to switch which budget that you're working on, whether it's be the optimistic or your less optimistic version, let's say, and paying a close attention to how your sales are trending for the year, so that if you need to switch, let's say, to your less optimistic budget, you can do that and you'll know and be comfortable that, hey, we have a plan for this. We've put things in place so that if we do need to make adjustments, we're prepared, and we'll be recovering the right amount of overhead from our budgets because we've made those adjustments and we're ready to make those changes. So it can be a great exercise as well, just to kind of put you at ease to know that, hey, if it does get to this point, then this is what we have to do to recover and to stay afloat. Or, again, the opposite, if, we are increasing our sales, this is what we have to do in order to keep up with that new demand and make sure that, we're still running smoothly and efficiently. So I hope this has helped. Just going to take a look here to see if there are any questions so far. Let's see. So I do have a question that came in regarding the divisional budgets. So let's take a look. Can anyone make a divisional budget? It says so. Yeah, the answer is anyone can technically make a divisional budget. Just for financial planning purposes, you can create a copy of your budget. However, I would probably only use your divisional budget for estimating if you're probably maybe, like, I would say 2 million or higher in revenue or so. essentially like each division can stand on its own 2 feet. So you don't have one division that's working at like a negative profit as a loss leader, because obviously you wouldn't want to estimate with like a negative profit. So you'd want to make sure at least that each division can stand on their own 2 feet. How many budget plans should we make? That's a good question. I would say like again, to aim for like a optimistic, pessimistic at least, and then your neutral budget that you hopefully have already created. So you've got one for an uptick in the economy and one for a downturn. If you really wanted to be prepared and kind of make a worst case scenario and a best case scenario, of course you could do that as well. Probably wouldn't take too much more time for you either. But if you wanted to do that just so you're better prepared, by all means. And then let's see. Is there an area in the budget you can put an unallocated expense just to be prepared? So I think if I'm not understanding it right, I apologize, but if you're just looking for a spot in the budget to put like an emergency fund or something like that, maybe for planning, so like unexpected expenses, that sort of thing, then I would certainly add a line to your overhead. So in the overhead section, you could just go to hit the new button, and then unexpected expenses, something like that perhaps, and then however much you're forecasting. And what that'll do is it'll increase your overhead percentage, obviously, but it'll also increase the overhead recovery amount percentage that you're charging on your estimates just a little bit to make sure that you're recovering a little bit of money off each estimate towards like a savings, whether you use that savings for like a downturn in the economy, or you use that savings for renting a new office space or whatever, new yard or whatever the case may be. So overhead is where I would put that one. I don't see any other questions here, but I will flip back to my presentation here. Quick tip today, I hope that copy feature helps you out a lot. It's a really good, convenient way that you can make quick adjustments to your budget to really help you forecast for anything, whether it be the economy or purchasing, hiring. So I hope you found that useful. So just to jump over here real quick, for those of you that are on Basic or Pro, you do have access to our forms library. So there's over 700 documents available in the forms section of your Element account. You can see where it is on the left-hand side there, things like safety inspection reforms. You can find job descriptions, you can find HR policies and all kinds of great things there that we provide for free as part of the Basic and Pro package. And if you haven't yet, please give our Facebook and LinkedIn groups a join. You can check them out through these links here. Lots of great content that gets shared on Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, perhaps not even just about LMN, but you want to connect and see how other LMN users are using the software in particular areas, or production rates or anything like that, it's a great community that you can ask to get some questions answered. And then of course, we have your back with tons of training available online, whether it be quick product tips like this one, or the webinar with Mark Bradley tomorrow. We have one-on-one support with your account reps. So if you do have any questions, if you're looking at help for creating a divisional budget, or need help creating a copy of your budget to plan for the economy, anything like that, feel free to reach out to the support team. We'd be happy to help. answer any questions through live chat, phone calls, or booking a one-on-one webinar as well. And then don't forget about the Academy Online. Tons of great video tutorials and guides that you can watch in the correct order on how to set up your Element account. So highly recommend those as well. And you can find all the resources at golmn.com/resources. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope today helped. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to contact our support team and we would be happy to help.